Mr. Basil here, he's going to be doing the canning class, and in our last meeting that we had, there were some issues, some talks and discussion about the video and recording. Mr. Basil Williams has allowed us to video it. If for some reason you don't want your voice on the video, just wait till the end and we'll turn that off and you can ask any questions that you need. But he's given us permission, so we're good to go. Any questions about that? Okay. Well, that's all the announcements that I have. I'd like to present Mr. Basil Williams to you.
Hi guys, how are y'all today? So I know looking around the room you'll probably think that I do not know what I'm talking about when it comes to canning, so I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm actually from West Tennessee. I was raised on a 50-acre farm. So from the time that I was born to the time that I am now, if we ate, we produced our own food. So whether it be meats, vegetables, fruits, whatever, so I've been growing up with my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother. I have about 43 years of experience with canning and keeping up with the UT Extension Office. I've taken several of their courses there as well. However, I am a rebel canner. So just to let you guys know, I am going to be teaching you guys today what UT Extension says to teach you. However, I'm also going to interject to you what old-time ways that has been proven and tried. And if it has been proven and tried, I don't change it. I've been an RN for 25 years this year. I have studied CDC guidelines. I've studied everything. And I can't find where the old way of canning is wrong. So I'm going to teach you the right way, and then I'm going to tell you how I do it. Because Grandma, we've eaten everything out of jars. As you can see, I brought some of my own products that anything that my family eats comes out of a jar. Unless it's just something special that I'm not growing at the time. It doesn't come from a store. It comes from my pantry. It comes from our garden, or it comes from the Amish that I get to it. So today I've got it's canning 101. I know probably some of you have canned, but I'm going to take you back to the very beginning, like you do not know what you're doing, like you don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah. So I'm just going to take it all the way back to the beginning, and then we'll build up to the point of actually getting into the process. So if you're new to canning, preserving, and canning can seem intimidating. And I know when I was growing up, my grandmother would not let us walk through the house because she said, if you walk through the house, that canner's going to blow up. So for years and years and years, I was terrified to walk through the house when she had a canner going. So I was like, I tell Sean, if I'm putting a canner on the stovetop, don't you move until I tell you that it is done. So it can be intimidating, and I understand that. So hopefully today after the class, I can kind of give you a little bit more information. And if you ever need someone to come and help you if you're canning and you don't feel safe to do it, you can call me. I'll be more than happy to come and help you. Now keep in mind, we just bought 10 acres of homesteading land. We're moving out on the 25th of March, so I'm in between that. So hopefully by the time that stuff starts coming in, I'll be a little bit settled down. And if you do ever want someone to come help you or walk you through it, let me know. I'll be more than happy to come. I have all the equipment. I have everything that you need. I'll be more than happy to come to your house, or if you guys don't mind to drive an hour, you can come up to the house and I can show you guys how I do things as well. So that way that you can have somebody there. But canning can be a very easy way to save money. And if you notice, I have it up here on the screen for the camera, but the packet that I gave you has everything step by step that I have on the screen. So you can either watch the screen or you can just look at your packet, either one, if you can't see the screen that well. So just to let you know that. And Amanda will have a copy for our group. If there's any new people that's not here today, she has a copy that she can get you a copy made. I believe in leaving back information to where everybody else can have that opportunity to know it. And canned fruits and vegetables will give you a long shelf life. As you can see, I have some here that I have got canned that was probably canned in 2019 and I'm still using. The only thing that it's lost its color just a little bit, but its flavor is still the same. So if I'm making a stew or if I'm making a pot pie, guess what? I open my oldest jars and I throw them in. So I still use it. People say, well, I won't use it more than 2 years. Your kitchen, your rules. But if it hasn't lost its flavor and if it hasn't lost the vitamins and the nutrients that I have put in that jar, I will use it as long as I have it. And so, I'm sorry?
If it's not fuzzy.
If it's not fuzzy, if it's not molded, if it doesn't smell bad, I still use it because I trust what I put in there. Yes, ma'am.
Question. You've sealed it with
not the screw on, just the little disc.
Um,
So you can use it for how long, non-refrigerated?
As long as this seal does not pop up when you pull it,
Uh-huh.
it is sealed. So after I get through canning it, I remove my bands.
Okay.
And I'll get into that a little bit when we get into the process.
And you can still use it non-refrigerated?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
As long as I can pull on it and it does not pop, it is good.
Okay.
And the reason why I take my rings off, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, is if you don't have a heated space that you keep your food in, like mine is in my garage, so it's hot, cold, it gives you the opportunity for it to expand and for it not to blow up. And so I always, on certain things, unless it is my fermented vegetables, I always take my rings off. That's just the way my grandmother did it. I'm not saying that that's the way you have to do it. It's just what I do for safety precautions. Just to where if it does, if it pops, then I know that that food is bad. And so I won't use that food. Go to the next screen. So getting started, foods with high acidity, such as fruits and tomatoes, there's several different ways of canning, and we'll go over each of those. But anything that's high acidity, you can do by water bathing. What we call just putting it in a pot. This is a water bather, so you can even take it. My grandmother would take a huge wash tub, and she would load it with 60 and 70 quarts at a time, and she would sit there for 4 hours, and she would keep that water boiling. So as long as that water is boiling, she would do it outside. I still do that if it's something that's high acidity, tomatoes, fruits. In one of your packets, I have a cheat sheet for you that tells you what is high acidity and how you can it and how you cannot. So I have included that in your packet as well. These foods are naturally acidic, and they're able to kill any bacteria at a boiling point of 120 degrees. So that's the reason why you don't have to pressure can those, because the bacteria will die at 120 degrees. Foods with a low acidity, like vegetables and soups, they require pressure canner. This is UT extension and USDA. I also water bathe those as well. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But they needed to have a high enough temperature of 200 to 250 to kill any bacteria. So that's the reason why a lot of people say, oh, you have to pressure can, you have to pressure can. And it might be easier to try canning produce with high acid first, because most, I have no clue what I was doing up there. Most pots found at home can be converted into a boiling water bath. So you don't have to go spend $60 for a water bather if you have a huge pot at home. You can convert that to a water bath. All you gotta do is put a liner in, and I have multiples of these, different sizes for different pots. You can get them flat, you can get them with the edges on it. You can put that in the bottom of a pot, and you can water bathe anything as long as that jar is covered by water.
Get those online on Amazon?
I'm sorry?
Get those at like Amazon or?
Yeah, you can get these at Amazon, you can get them at Walmart, anywhere that sells canners, you can find them. You can find them in different shapes, different sizes. You can find them with enamel, you can find them with metal. You can find them any shape or form. Before getting started, it is important to have all your right tools. I cannot stress that enough. If you are in the kitchen and you're getting ready to can food, make sure you know where all your tools are. Because when you get in there and you're in the middle of trying to put hot jars into a boiling pot of water, you do not want to burn yourself. Canning is one of the fastest ways to hurt your hand by burning. I mean, believe me, if you look at my hands, I have scars everywhere. But I'm a pro at it. I just use a glove now. I don't even worry about what tools I have. So mason jars, and there's several of those, and we'll go over them. You have your quart size, and you have your pint size. In your quart jars, you have them in wide mouth, and you have them in regular mouth. And really, depending upon your preference, the wide mouth is easier to fill, but I use a lot of the small mouth because I can find them a lot easier. And then you have your, I don't have a wide mouth. So when I'm doing anything, potatoes, cabbage, anything that I need to stuff in there, that's where I use a wide mouth for, because I can get all my cabbage in there without standing there spending all day trying to break it apart and make it look like sauerkraut. I have it to where I can open it up and cook it. And you also have wide mouth in your pots as well. So if I'm doing peas, beans, anything that's going to expand that I need to have more headroom in, I'll put them into a wide mouth jar. And I have that in your packet as well for you to look at as well. And then of course you need your kitchen utensils such as tongs, funnels, spatulas. I have probably 4 or 5 of each one, because when you get in the kitchen and you're canning, all of a sudden it just disappears and you cannot find it. So I have backup. I know where to go to grab it because it's right there. And then of course you want your pressure canner or your water bath canner. A lot of people, old timers, call them cold pack canners. So if you hear the cold pack canner or water bath, they're the same thing. Go ahead. So these, and you may not be able to see this on the screen, but in your packet, I have included the tools that I recommend for you, because I recommend the tongs 2 different times, because you want one that you can pick up food with and the jar with. This magnetic thing and this little air remover, I throw them away because they are a waste of my time. They get in my way because I use a fork or I use tongs to pick up my lids and my bands out of water with. That magnet does not work. Throw it away. Just telling you. And then of course you want your jars. Okay, I got it. Excuse me guys, I am a dipper, so I apologize. Go ahead to the next one. Hand out some of these. I'm going to pass around some different things for you to look at. Pass out some of these too. Yeah, pass them around. And then pass these as well. So I'm opening up new things because I have more than 5 or 6 boxes of these open at all times, and if you ever get into canning, you will as well. I guess they weren't necessary. So there are 2 types of your rings, of your flips. I recommend getting these. I already have those out. So this one, I think this is the reusable coming. This one is the reusable. You would have a band that you put inside of this, just like this right here. So when you put it on your lid, it makes it just like a, do I have a reusable going around somewhere? I think this is a reusable here. So a non-reusable, it automatically comes with a band. You're not supposed to reuse these. That's what the FDA tells you. As long as it's not broken or damaged, I reuse mine. As long as it still reseals. I'm so sorry, I popped up the camera. But these you can get on Tatler.com. They're reusable. So as long as these will last for 20 years, and as long as these are not not dented, not got holes or rust in them, you can reuse them over and over and over. I strongly recommend getting the Tatlers. They are a little bit more expensive in the beginning, but they will last you your lifetime. And they will keep reusing them and reusing them. I have bands that my grandmother and my great-grandmother has used. Very good.
So the top, once it's done and comes out, it pops.
It pops it down.
And then you open it and it pops up.
Yes.
That's how white it's still used.
Yes, ma'am. So as you can tell, these have rust on them. My grandmother and great-grandmother has probably used these before me. So as long as they're not too bad, and I can still get a wire brush in there and clean them out, I will use that metal band until it just falls apart, because they're safe to use. Now those, this year I'll probably use for my fermentation process, because it's going to, I don't have to have it sealed up. So when I put those rings on the jar, I will use my rusted ones, and then I'll get newer ones to replace those and use them for fermentation. Go ahead.
So Tatler is T-A-T-L-E-R?
T-A-T-T-L-E-R. And the ones that I have here that I'm showing you, they're a little bit less cheaper than what the glass ones are. They have a glass one that you can get. I think I paid like $60 for 100 of those with the rings. And that is a big saving, because each of those little boxes that I just opened cost you about $3 to $4 at Walmart, and there are only 12 in those. So if you break down the pricing, getting the reusable ones, you're saving money in the long run because you can repeat and reuse those. Yes, ma'am.
You know, during COVID, those $3 and $4 boxes were going for $10, and you were happy to pay it because
Yes.
you weren't finding them anywhere.
Yes, and that is well, even in the summertime, sometimes when I'm looking for them, I can't find them. Like especially if I'm using my wide mouth jars, I can't find them. So I go to my reusable ones just because I already have them there and I know that I've got them. And believe me, you can never have enough of flips and bands. You think that, oh, well, I've got too many. You can never have enough because if you're wanting to can other stuff and you can take the ring off of it, but you're going to have the flip to go with it. So if you can never have too many, I suggest having them. And guys, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by no means, but what happened on Thursday, it's going to happen more. And I am very strong in my faith, but I believe that the Lord is leading His people to get prepared. Because our government is going to shut down at some point. And if you're not prepared, you're out of luck. Excuse me for interrupting that, but will you grab? And those are the supposedly non-reusable ones. So
These are non-reusable?
let me see.
Band?
This one.
Oh.
No, they're reusable.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just keep forgetting where they're at. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to replace the little rubber piece?
After 20 years, or unless you break them. Yes. And if you read up on Tatler on the website, it'll tell you how long that they will last. And I'll tell you how to use them like in the process when we get in there. Because it is a little bit different than using the non-reusable ones. Because they need to be boiled for 10 minutes to where that rubber gets soft. To where when you put it on the jar, that it will seal. So we'll talk about that a little bit more.
You just boil the non-reusable ones?
I put my non-reusable ones in hot water just to kind of soften them up. But you have people who say you don't have to, and then you have people who say you do have to. So your kitchen, your rules. I find that if I just put them in hot water long enough to get them hot, they will seal faster than boiling them. So I don't waste my time. That's a process that I don't waste my time on because of my success rate of it sealing. So I just put it in there maybe for a minute or two, and then I put it in the jar. Now my rubber ones like this, the Tatler ones, I will boil them for 10 minutes to where I know that I get a good seal and that I don't have to worry about it popping off. So it's kind of based upon how you, like your experience and what you want to do. I tell everybody, your kitchen, your rules. So if you feel safer boiling them for 10 minutes, do so. So that way you have that peace of mind. Because what I do, you may not be comfortable with.
So Basil, when you say you put them in hot water, do you mean boiling water?
Boiling water.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So I put them inside of my ring, and then I stack them up so where I can just pick them up with a fork or with tongs, and then I just let them sit for about 2 minutes.
It's good that you don't use your fingers in boiling water.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of stuff to do. I need those. So we're going to talk about pressure canners for a minute. Miss Amanda actually brought her All-American. I personally have never used an All-American. I have always used the dial. To me, that's just to me. It is the safest one because I have more control over it. Because with hers, you have the pound on your little cockpit, right?
Yeah.
So on this one, when you put and I left mine at home too, when you put the cockpit on it, it has a 5, 10, or 15 pound pressure. So when you put that on there, that's how much pressure you're going to have on that pot. On mine, when I put the little cap on, I can control how high my pressure goes. So I find that to me is more safer because my grandmother used one of those that had the 5 and 10 and 15 and she'd say, "Don't you walk through the house." I wasn't moving. I sat still because I was afraid this one would blow up. So with this, I can tell, okay, I'm getting close to 10 pounds or I'm getting close to 15 pounds. I do not want to go no higher. So I'll turn my heat down. I control how much pressure is in that pot. And I can control how high it goes. Whereas on this one, I'm not so sure about that. But if you use an All-American, it's great because they're safer from what I understand. You don't have as much trouble with sealing it because if you seal it down, it's already sealed. Whereas mine, I check every year. I have a rubber seal inside. I make sure I take it off. I inspect it. I lube it down. Then I make sure there's no nicks, no cuts. It's not supposed to be there. And then when I seal it up, I know that I don't have an air leak.
What are you lubing it with?
I use vegetable oil. Just vegetable oil, just make sure it's not crumbly and rough. Then I also have to make sure that I check my vent to make sure that it's not clogged up. I make sure I take it about every 5 years to the UT office and have them to check my regulator, so that way that I know that it's working properly. And I also make sure that I check my safety vent. Does that one have a safety vent?
With the All-American, you don't have to, it doesn't have a seal, you don't
Yeah.
have to do the extension on it.
You don't have to do any of that with that one. That is the advantage of the newer All-American. Mine, I like the old-fashioned. Like I told you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now they have these new ones that have come out, the electric ones. Go ahead.
I think there's a, down inside.
Turn it that way. Oh, that's the pep clock. Okay. I didn't see that. I didn't get too nosy. So this is what I was talking about. You can pass that around to where you can see it. On it, you set the amount of pressure that it's going to be on. So I'm kind of leery myself. I trust my grandmother, her process. Yes, ma'am.
The one that goes on the Presto canner, it's 15 pounds. So if you don't have anybody to test your canner,
Yeah.
all you need to do is make sure that when it starts jiggling, you're at 15 pounds.
Gotcha. I did not know that. Thank you. See, I learned something new today. Because mine is just the one that just sets on top of it. And it'll reach 15 pounds very quick. So you cannot walk out of your kitchen. You have to be in the kitchen when you're doing it, because it'll get to 15 pounds. And then if you have it on high heat, it's going to hit 20 and it's going to go poof. It'll blow up. So I'm telling you, if you do not watch your canners, if you do not have the time, don't start it. Yes, ma'am.
Are you cooking on a gas stove or electric stove?
I use a electric glass top, which you're not supposed to use a canner on.
That's what I have.
But I do, because I set it on the top just like I do my cast iron. You're not supposed to use cast iron on a glass top. I do. So I'm a rebel canner. I do have, when we get to the Homestead, I actually am setting up a canning kitchen that has a propane tank that I'll set my canner on, to where I can control it from there. Because it's outside the house. I have more room to work, because when you have dogs and cats and animals and you have like a huge family like I do, you've got people running in and out, you can't control it. If I have a separate canning kitchen for my canning process, I'm the only one in there. You need a wristband to get in. So you can't ride that ride unless you're high. So
I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know I found this out, I didn't know, but the jars and the straight edge are for the freezers.
Yes.
Can you use those in the can?
yes, as long as it is a glass jar and you can put a ring on it, yes. Now you cannot take this jar and put it in the freezer because it will bust. Because it will explode in the freezer. But you can use the ones from the freezer into the canner as
And
well.
they are straight edged.
This is a straight edge. My cabbage, so I can actually freeze my cabbage in the freezer, because you can tell
They are different.
they are very much different. So straight edge, whereas there's a dip.
Okay.
So can y'all see that? See how there's a straight edge and then this one has more of a...
So isn't that just a wide mouth?
This is a wide mouth, but you can put it in the freezer. It is freezer safe.
Okay.
This
Not
one
all
is
wide
not.
mouths, this one freezers.
All of them are, because they're straight.
Okay.
And why is that? Just because it's got the,
Because it doesn't have room to expand. See?
even if you leave it low enough?
Yes. It's not recommended, I should say. Okay, so let's just say that. It is not recommended. Y'all see how the difference in the jars? It's just straight up and down and it's just got a carpet. Okay. Any more questions before we move on with the canners? Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
What are your thoughts on the digital canners?
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
It's a no.
It's a no. It is a hard no.
His thoughts are, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yes, because I don't, and it may be because I'm as old as I am and I've never used them. There are people out here who do use them and they absolutely love them. I don't trust the digital because I can't control, with both of these I can control more than with digital. If you go out of electricity, you can't use that. I can take these and put them on a wood burning stove and I can still use them. So that's my reason, is I'm old fashioned. I want to be able to use it if I don't have electricity. And going completely off grid, I don't have electricity to use. So I believe there's going to come a time we're going to have trouble with power. So you need to be, if you do get one, have a backup. Either have a water bath canner that you can use to back up, or have you one that is tried and true and a proven method. So we're in homesteading, guys. This is what this is. You know, I'm just telling you the way I see it and the way I believe it. So, and then, go on, we got one more. And then, of course, I told you about the water canner. My grandmother uses a big old galvanized tub. As long as the water is covering the top of the jars, she don't even waste time with buying one of these, because she can put 60 in a galvanized tub outside over a wood burning fire, and she can get it all done in one time. It's 3 hours to do 60 quarts, whereas this will only hold 7, and you'll have to do like 10, so that's 30 hours of getting it done. So, and once I get to the farmstead, I will have the old wash tub outside that I'll be using. Just make sure that the water covers your jars. I cannot stress that enough.
Does it have to have a lid?
No, it does not have to have a lid. As long as you keep that water boiling, it does not have to have a lid. Yes, ma'am.
What are you putting in between when you're stacking?
In those, I don't do anything. I just make sure that I have the metal on the bottom, the space on the bottom, because usually the jars will brace themselves up. You can put a towel in it. I don't put anything in mine.
You stack it 2 at a time?
No, we put them all on the bottom. We don't double stack in a canner, because the reason, unless you're doing pints, and then you have to have the metal in between them, so that way it will not roll.
That's right.
Yes. So if you do double stack inside of it, of a wash tub, make sure that you have a wire rack, because it will make it stable to where when the water is boiling, it will not knock them over. You don't want that to happen, because then you're going to have a huge mess. Jars will explode. I have had it to happen, mostly because my jars were just, I didn't realize I had cracks in them, and we'll talk about that when we get to the process as well. Make sure you check your jars every time you use them. Roll them over, see if there's any cracks, dents, dings, anything. Do not put them in a pressure canner. It will crack, it will blow up, and you'll lose your food. So use them jars for something else. Go ahead. Yeah, you might get shrapnel. So we're going to start with the process now. So we're in this is where I'm going to tell you what is supposed to be done, and then I'm going to tell you what I do. So there is a difference. So all the information on these slides follows the USDA guideline, as personal quotations are directly my experience and from my heritage. And I have to stress that to you. What I'm going to tell you today is from my experience. This is not what the USDA says. So although low acidity and high acidity foods use different kind of canners, the overall canning process is virtually the same for both. So you just have to know what you're doing. Timelines. In the second packet that I gave you everything I had. I found information to where you have a question about apples, you've got times, and you've got process methods for apples. If you want to do asparagus, whatever, I have searched and searched to create that for you to where you have those timelines and know how to do it. Because I'm just doing it from experience. I have blown jars up. I've never blown a canner up, and I've had one to seal and lock on me, and I couldn't get it open because I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to use a sledgehammer to get my food out. But, so I did not have this information that you guys have today in front of you. I have learned from experience. So I've went through a lot. So the first step that you want to do, of course, is you want to gather ingredients, read through any recipes, follow any step-by-step instructions of how to prepare the fruit, how to prepare your vegetable. Ball has a lot of good recipes out there that you can follow. Kerr has a lot of good recipe books out there that you can follow. Find you an old timer that has done it for 50, 60 years. I promise you they'll do it better than Ball or Kerr, either one. It'll taste much better, so I promise you. Then you want to wash and dry your jars, lids, and bands. No matter if I know that my jars are clean, before I get ready to can anything, I will wash my jars with soap and water. I will make sure that there's no chips, no cracks, like I told you before. I inspect my jars many times over because I don't want to lose what I'm canning. After I get them washed, Then I will soak them in hot boiling water. I'll put them to sterilize them. So that way that I know that my jar is clean, that my jar does not have any bacteria. Going into the process, I know that I have done everything in my power to make sure that I'm not going to make somebody sick. Because that's just the way my grandmother's always done it. It's the way my great-grandmother did it. You always make sure you have a clean environment. And then the bans, so USDA, going to one of y'all's questions. The USDA says that your bans should be kept at room temperature. They should not be put in hot water. However, I put mine in water because I want to make sure there's no bacteria on it. That's the only reason why I put it in water. They also here says keep the jars and lids in hot water, but not boiling water. I boil my water because at 210 degrees, whatever the boiling temperature of water is, there's no bacteria going to survive that. So I want to make sure no bacteria is in my jars. Then it says to simmer 2 to 3 inches of water in a pressure canner or fill the boiling water canner half full. I always make sure that the water on my jars in a pressure canner is halfway up a quart jar. So the quart jar is this one. So when I put my jars in that canner, I want to make sure that my water is this deep. For the simple fact that I do not want that water to boil out of my pressure canner while I'm cooking the food. Because if you have that water to boil out, you're going to ruin the process and lose food. I'm not into the method of losing food. I want to make sure that everything I put in there comes out the way. If I'm using pint jars, I cover my pint jars with water. So I want at least 4 to 5 inches of water. So that way I know that my food is going to be safe. I have got friends, I'm in several groups that she's like, I don't know what I did wrong. I put 2 inches of water in my pressure cooker and it blew up because it boiled dry. You do not want to boil dry, ever. You will ruin it. Now, most of you know, and we see Facebook posts all the time, what's wrong with this world is we don't have enough people sitting on the front porch with grandma snapping beans or shucking corn or shelling peas or picking okra. That's the truth. In their process, they say get your food ready after you're done. I get my food ready before I start the process because it's going to take you several hours to shuck corn, cut it off the cob, or peel tomatoes, or snap beans and get all that done. I have that done before I get to step number 5. It is waiting on my counter covered in water, waiting to go in jars before I start the process. Number 6, the 6th step is to remove your jars from, they say use the canner. I use mine in a sink of hot water. So I don't put them in the canner because I don't want to have to double work, take them out. So I put mine in my sink or in another big tub that's got boiling water in it. So I'll take my jars out. That's where your funnel comes in handy. You do not want any food residue on top of your jar. So that's the reason why it's important to have a funnel. Put that funnel in there, fill your jar up to what I always leave mine at 1 inch headspace. Because if you do not, it is going to swell inside the jar. So I get mine to the top of this here, and I leave enough room to where that if it should swell, that it's not going to blow up and make my lid pop off after it seals. So I always leave about a 1 inch headspace. You have other recipes that says 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. My rules, my kitchen, I leave 1 inch because I don't want to take the chance of it ruining. I want to make sure that it's going to be good. I have food in my pantry that has been from 2018. As you guys can see, this is one of my tomatoes. I probably went a little bit higher because this is a different method, but this is where I put my food at. Because I know that this tomato, when I open it to make soup with it, it's going to be good. This lid is still sealed. I don't have to worry about it. I've got food for 5 years when I put it in there. And also make sure that when you put your food in there, if it's something that holds air in the bottom, make sure I use a butter knife. I will take it and run it around the sides of my jars to make sure that there's no air bubbles in the bottom, because that air will create space for bacteria to grow. So I do not leave any air. It says a spatula. I use a butter knife. It's just easier and quicker. Go ahead. And like I said, you always want to clean the rim of your jar. What did you do with the user? Here it is. I need a ring. Not a ring. He's still learning, guys. I'm having to teach him as I teach y'all. So after I fill my jar up with food, I take a paper towel. I don't use anything that leaves fuzzies or anything like that. I take a paper towel, I wipe my rim, and then I make sure that I put my seal on, and you seal it just finger tight. Don't be macho man and try to wrench it all the way down. It will explode. So finger tight, and then it's ready to go in your canner. And then you put it in your canner.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought you said on acidy food, you don't keep the ring on there.
When you after it's
For
done,
storage.
you have to have the ring on at all times during the canning process for it to seal, because you're creating that seal there.
Yeah, but that one's 5 years old?
Yes.
It's got the ring on it?
I just forgot to take it off.
Okay.
I
That's
just
why you had me confused, I was like.
and that one is not, that one is called kettle canning. It's kettle canning, so it's a little bit different too, and we'll go over that here in a minute. I just forgot to take them off. I try to take them all off.
I see people use vinegar around that. Is that
Yes.
necessary or not?
My experience, no, because I mean, it's not really doing. If you have done everything that I said beforehand, you've got all your bacteria clean, you've got it off. They do that as an antibacterial and some other things like that. That's the reason why they use vinegar. I don't use it because I know that my process is sterile. And so I don't use the vinegar. I just use a rag, make sure that it's not got anything that's going to prevent that seal. That's the only thing I'm doing. And then you put your jars in the canner. Anybody got any more questions? You got a question? Okay. I thought you had one. Then you put your jars and make sure that water is either halfway above the quart or over the pond. Go ahead. And then when you do that, so this is my rule. USDA tells you how long you're supposed to do each vegetable. If it is a non-acid food, I boil mine for 30 minutes on 10-pound pressure. That's what I've always done. I have never had a problem with it. That's the way my grandmother did it. That's the way my great-grandmother did it. USDA tells you that some vegetables have to be 45 minutes, some have to be 75 minutes, some have to be 90 minutes. If it is a vegetable, I do it for 30 minutes on 10 pounds of pressure. Because by the time that it builds up, it's going to take you about 15 minutes to build. Then you're going to process for 30. And then when you turn it off, it's going to still be under pressure for another 15 minutes. So by the time that I get through with that 30-minute time, I'm in my canner for over an hour. So by that time, I know that I have nothing to worry about. So I do 30 minutes at 10-pound pressure. If you live above 2,000 feet altitude, you need to raise it up by 1 degree. So 2,000 to 4,000 is 11, 4,000 to 6,000 is 12. Determine what your altitude is. I cannot stress that enough. I do believe that the altitude does make a difference. So make sure that you are checking what your altitude is. I usually run 12 pounds, 10 to 12, because it's going to fluctuate just a little bit. As
So
you're
2,400, so it'd be 11 pounds.
be 11 pounds.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I would definitely run it at between 11 and 12 pounds for 30 minutes, just to give it that extra safety. So you can run it all at 15 pounds if you wanted to. It ain't going to hurt you. But if you look at these canners, you only got 5 pounds of pressure before you get to the caution zone, and I stay away from that caution zone with everything in my power. So I stay below 15 pounds at all costs. I will not go above 15 pounds. I will evacuate the whole house if it hits 16 pounds. Because I am not going to have a canner to blow up in my house. No, not doing it.
You're the first person I met with PTSD from a canner.
Yes, because as a kid, I'm telling you, when I was a kid, my grandmother hit the deck and she come running through the house, and then you went right behind her. We didn't ask no questions. So that was PTSD, yes ma'am.
The 30 pounds, or 30 minutes at 10 pounds, is that quarts or pints or both?
That is both. I don't separate times. The only time that and I'm fixing to go over that here in just a second, the only time that I differentiate in my times is with meat. Soups, meats, or anything like that. I do my quart jars at 90 minutes on 30 pounds of pressure for meat. Yes.
Those gauges, they need to be pressure check? Make sure it's
Yes,
right?
I do that about every 5 years on mine. Now, she told me that I didn't know this and I found this out today, that my pressure is 15 pounds. So as long as it gets to where it starts moving, but I still take mine to the extension office and have them checked just to make sure for safety issues.
Carter County didn't have anyone that could check it, because you actually had to go to a school and get certified to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
So it was a good year or something that they didn't have anyone to check those things. So
Yeah.
just in case you ever don't have somebody.
Yeah, and that is good to know. I didn't know that. I'm glad I know that now. As long as I know that that is a 15-pound pressure weight on there, and if it gets to 15 pounds for me, I'll be scared. I still will take it, because I'm scared when it gets to 15 pounds. I'm out of the house. So, but yes, I do take mine to the extension office. And I have had this canner. I am 43 years old. I've had it for 23 years. I've never had a problem with it. In fact, I have never had to replace my rubber seal, because I take mine, like the gentleman said, I take mine and have it checked. I make sure I put the oil on it to where it keeps that rubber from breaking down. If you take care of your pressure canners, they'll last you your entire lifetime. We saw a 101-year-old lady on Facebook. It might have been in one of our groups, I don't remember. She was 101 years old, and she had an All-American, or one that was similar to an All-American. It wasn't All-American. And she had 12 kids, and she had used that since she was in her early 20s. And she was 101. And let me tell you something. I wouldn't have used it because that dial was rusted and I barely could see the numbers. But this 100-year-old woman was still using that very same canner. And she was still using it, to my knowledge, when she was doing the video. She was doing a video on Facebook, and her daughter was asking her questions about it. How do you use this? And she had been using it. The woman that had given it to her had been dead for 50 years. So it had been handed down to her by somebody else. So if you take care of your pressure canners, you'll have them for the rest of your life. I have 4 pressure canners, and I have 2 water bathers. Not all of them are at my house right now because I don't have room. I don't have enough room. It's the reason why I'm getting a canning kitchen, because I can have everything in one place. I don't have to have it in West Tennessee, or I have to have it over here. I have all my stuff to where I can use it. Any more questions or any more comments? Go ahead. If you have any questions in your packet, I have included the USDA. I have included their link. I don't recommend. I'm sorry, I can't say that. I recommend using tried and true experience. Okay, I promise you, it has never failed. So there is a packet in your, because a lot of people says, "Oh, what about botulism? What about botulism?" So we're going to. I'm a nurse. I have been one for 25 years this year. So if you want to find that, I don't have that pulled up on here. Go to the next screen. What do I have next? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So open kettle canning is something that I do with pickles. I do with tomato juice, tomato sauce. So it does not require a pressure canner at all, or a water bath canner. So what you do is you peel your tomatoes. This is a open kettle canning method. So this is what we're going to go over next. So what you would do is you would peel your tomatoes, core them. My grandmother has a wash pan that they used to wash dishes with. So we set that on the stovetop. We'll peel our tomatoes, and that's tedious. So if you have a trick to do those a quicker way, please let me know, because I stand there all day and I peel those. Yes, ma'am. Boil them first.
Boil them.
Okay.
Just hold right out water.
Oh wow! So I learned something different, because my grandmother's always used a paring knife, and we stood this. That's not thin enough. You get that skin off there thinner than that. So
I've heard, not a personal experience, but I've heard on other YouTube channels that they say if you freeze them, and then when you defrost them, the skin's
Huh, okay.
Like, if you don't get enough to do a batch.
Yes, ma'am.
You just start throwing them in the freezer, and then when you're ready, you pull them all out, and they defrost, and you can just pull the skins right off.
Okay, so there's several methods out there. I have many years of stained hands of tomatoes and acid on my hands, because Grandma would say, them peels are not thin enough. You're wasting too much tomato. So I've got it down to the pat where I just stand there at the kitchen and I'll just start peeling. And so when you get them peeled, you cut them and you core them. Now I save my cores for either juice or for stews, because they're still a good product. Then you would just take I use a metal, I wouldn't use Teflon or rimmed in the bottom because it'll stick to the bottom. You want a soft bottom pan. And then you put just enough water to cover the bottom of your pan, and you cook your tomatoes down. When you cook those tomatoes down, it's going to turn to all juice, and it's going to turn into soft, mushy tomatoes. So then what you would do is you would take your jar, and you put of course, I cannot stress enough to have the funnel. The funnel is your best friend. And you put your tomatoes in it, and then you seal it. USDA says that you need to water bath it for 10 minutes. I do not. We have canned tomatoes this way for years, because when those tomatoes are at a boil and it's over 200 degrees, when you put it in that jar, it is going to seal that jar up. And as you can tell where I did with my tomatoes, I have not lost any coloration. If you wanted to open these and eat these today, you're more than welcome to. You can taste them. I put just a teaspoon of salt in mine just to add a preservative in it to help with the acid. Yes, ma'am.
Are your jars hot before you pour that hot?
Yes, the same process if I was going to water bath or pressure can. They are sterilized. Everything is sterilized. If you don't have that sterilization process done first, you're going to have stuff that's going to spoil. And I promise you will. That's the reason why I do it that way, is I make sure everything is hot. I make sure everything is sterilized to where when I put my food in there, when I open it, it's going to be the same. And then I always leave my jar setting for 24 hours. Do not disturb them. Do not touch them. Because if you touch them in that 24 hours, it can break that seal. Now, that's not a proven method. That's Grandma's rule. So that's what Grandma always said. That's what I've always done. But I do not touch my jars for 24 hours. Because it is not, you're not using pressure, and you're not heating that up inside of a water bather to get it up to the desired temperature that it's supposed to be. You're using an open kettle method. There are a lot of people who use, and I can't remember what it's called, if somebody can help me, oven canning. Dry canning. The only thing that I would dry can is if it's like cereal, flour, things like that. And I don't even do that because it's not going to last long enough for me to dry heat it. I don't waste my time with it. It is out there, look it up. I just never use it because to me it's wasting a jar. I use vacuum seal, and I use freeze dry, because that to me would last longer than it being in a jar, and I'm not standing over a hot stove all day. So I use vacuum seal. You can get the thing on your jar. It's a little device. I don't have one, but you put it on your jar. It vacuum seals everything out of it. It's just as safe as if you had put it in a pressure canner. So if you're interested in doing that, I wouldn't even worry about oven canning or dry canning, whatever that's called, because it's just, to me, you're wasting more time doing that. Any questions or any comments? Okay, so here is, we're going to go over this screen first before we go into this. So if you can be looking for, it says fun facts about botulism. If you can find that, go ahead to that screen. So these are statistics that I pulled from the CDC. Working in nursing, I am a scientific person plus experienced person, because I do like to know what the CDC reports, because they are a good resource along the way sometimes. So when I began to do my research, 110 cases per year in the United States is reported of botulism. 70% of that 110 are infants, and they're not even foodborne. It is the milk that is being canned, the pasteurized, the formula that they make is what gives those infants botulism. So out of 110 cases, 70% of that is infant botulism. That takes us down to 33 cases per year, of which 30 to 40% are from wounds and not even from food. So you hear people all the time, botulism, botulism. In 25 years, I have never seen one case of botulism from home canned food. I have been a travel nurse. I have worked in several of your top hospitals in the United States. I have been a trauma nurse for 15 of those years. And then I worked in neonatal ICU for the remaining part of that. I have a lot of experience. And if you had botulism from home canned food, you would be in my floor. because you're not going to walk into a normal floor. You'll be in ICU. That takes us down to 22 cases a year, half of which are Alaskan tribes from eating dried and fermented fish. That leaves 10 cases of a year which are commercially prepared and mishandled food. How many of you have had food poisoning? You've had botulism in your lifetime because it came from commercially prepared food. If you follow the steps that I told you today, and you keep those reference sheets that you have in front of you when you're canning, the likelihood of you contracting botulism is almost none. Not saying that it can't be, because you can get food that may have something in the dirt that we're not aware of. But if you prepare your food the way that you're supposed to, it is almost none % chance that you're going to get botulism. So what's my next one? So this is from the last 21 years on botulism. 2001, there was 14 cases from commercially canned chili in Texas. 2007, there was 10 cases from commercially canned castleberry chili sauce. You'll notice the kind of like a trend here. Chili sauce. Now, 2015, there was 19 cases for potato salad from a potluck in Ohio. Potatoes grow in dirt. Botulism grows in dirt. So you have to be careful with things like that. 31 cases in 2016 were from illegal made alcohol amongst prison inmates in Mississippi. And in 2017, 10 cases from commercially canned nacho cheese from California gas station.
It's California.
Yeah, it's California. That tells you enough right there.
Beg your pardon.
Sorry. There are 48 million cases of food poisoning per year, which 3,000 people will die. All of those are E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, etc. So you have a better chance of catching E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria. Botulism doesn't even break the top 10. You go on CDC website, and if anyone tells you anything about botulism, I tell them all the time, you need to get your resources from a reliable source. Because I work with CDC, and I trust them better than I do anything else. If you go to the CDC website, they don't even break the top 10 diseases in this nation. So when somebody tells you, oh, well, you're going to give your family botulism, bull crap. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And all of those cases come from commercially canned food or improperly handled food. You can get botulism from potatoes if it is not kept at a temperature that is safe. We all know safe temperatures. I'm not going to go into that. But if you leave food out and you let it set, guess what? You're asking for trouble. Make sure you put your stuff away properly. That's just common sense. The only instance of botulism from a home canned food was in 2006 when there were 2 cases found from improperly prepared, what was that word? Improperly prepared asparagus. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, yes, you have a chance of getting sick. But if you're making sure that your kitchen is sterilized, your cans are sterilized, your food is prepared and washed, you have nothing to worry about. So I put these cheat sheets in, and it's too small for y'all to see. I put all of this in that second packet for you. If you want to know how to do apples, you need 1 bushel, 16 to 20 quart jars. It'll tell you exactly what you need. If you have any questions, I'm on Facebook. Please shoot me a message. I will answer any questions you have. And this is what I was telling you about. I gave you how you pre-cook it, water bath it. It says 180 minutes, which is about 3 hours. Water bathing, you always boil it for 3 to 4 hours. Never go any less than that. If you don't have 3 hours to start your canner, don't start your canner. Because if you shut it off before that 3 hour mark, you are improperly preparing your food. So you have to make sure you have that 180 minute time. 10 pounds of pressure, they're saying 40 minutes for artichokes. I do 30 Like I said, because by the time it's in my canner, it's in there for an hour, I'm safe. So I've included this in your packet. It will tell you exactly how you need to prepare each fruit, what method you can use, and how long you can use it. If you have any questions about any of that information, I'm always available. And like I said, I'll come out to you guys. I'll do whatever I can to help you, make you feel safer, and make sure that you're doing what the right and proper way. Did y'all find this fun facts about botulism?
Yeah.
Who wants to read that first paragraph for me? Can I get someone to read that first paragraph?
Oh. This is going to be a good news, bad news kind of story. We'll start with the bad news. Foodborne botulism.
Air bubbles would cause it. And that's the reason why I said when you're putting your food in your jars, make sure you are getting that air out. So improper canned food can kill you. I am not negating that. But if you do it properly, this is where everybody gets the big scare. The USDA has tried to scare us for years that if you eat home canned food, you're going to die. But if you're doing it properly, and you're doing it, taking out all the air bubbles, and you're sterilizing everything, and you've got that sterilized environment, it says that botulism spores cannot revive after you do it properly. That's the key thing.
But it doesn't have to be, like you look at the jar and it's not percolating, it's not fuzzy, it's still gonna have it in there.
Yeah, because if it's not done properly.
Yeah.
If you did all the steps, and I went with ball and Kerr and everything, if you do the steps that they recommend you doing, making sure your jars are sterilized, making sure your flips and your bands are sterilized, make sure you got all the air out, make sure there's nothing breaking that seal. When you pressure can or when you water bathe that food and you get it up to 240 degrees, it kills any of that bacteria. And it stays safe for as long as you don't open that jar. But now
So let me ask you, if you did that, if you boiled it to that level and you killed botulism, but let's say you did have a bubble or two in your jar. A couple of years down the road you go to use it.
It is dangerous. That's the reason why
When you killed the botulism.
not if the air bubble is in there.
You didn't?
No, because the air is leaving that space for that bacteria to grow. So you have to have all that air out.
And then once you boil it.
Yes, then it kills
If there's
it.
any air in the jar. then
Yes.
Even at the high temperature, it still has
Yes,
opportunity.
it still has the opportunity. But if you're doing everything that you're supposed to, and you make sure you're packing that jar the way it's supposed to, and there's no air in there, you have no fear. And this is the reason why we're reading over this. It's because the lady that did this, she was trying to get people to understand the necessity of properly canning food. Every instance that we went over of canned food that had botulism, what did it say? Improperly canned. If you are improperly canning your food, you are risking the chance of botulism killing somebody in your family.
I may never eat another Christmas present again.
We have so much fear about the canning process, but really it's the prepping process.
It's the prepping
that's more
process,
important.
yes.
Yeah.
The prepping process is your most important step. Making sure that you know, if you have a group of ladies that's helping you or you're doing a community event, you want to make sure that each person that is doing a job knows what they're doing. Make sure that they have it washed properly. Make sure that they have those jars sterilized. Make sure that they have the correct temperature that you need it to be. How long is it supposed to be water bathed? How long is it supposed to be pressure canned? If you're doing those steps properly, you have nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. And believe me, I eat everything from jars. I can tell you, and you can tell I don't go without food. I mean, I'm standing in front of you 43 years later. Who wants to read that next paragraph? Water bath foods. The water bath foods.
Oh, water bath foods require one extra step to be safe. If you can remember a very short rhyme, you will be fine. Heat it before you eat it. The spores are very heat resistant, but the toxins are quite fragile.
The toxins are quite fragile. If you are water bathing a food and you are unsure about it, my method of water bathing foods is I will boil it for 15 minutes before I eat it. Because I know that if it is boiled for 15 minutes at 210 degrees or higher, that all of those spores are dead. So if you, especially pressure canning is not so bad because you know that it's been killed. Water bathing, I always heat it up. And as far back as I can remember, anything that my grandmother ever water bathed, she always cooked before she served. Nowadays, you got people who want to take, I don't have anything that's water-based here today. They just want to open it up, put it in a pot, warm it up, and serve it. That's the society that we live in. Canned foods like this is not meant to be a microwave food. Remember that. Just because I have it in a jar does not mean that I'm just going to open it up and serve it to my family. Except my tomatoes. Now, I will those because I eat them raw. I just love to drink the juice. But you always want to cook. So remember that saying, heat it before you eat it. If you do that, you're safe.
So when you heat it before you eat it, does that mean in the jar?
No, in like a cooking pot. So
Okay.
you would cook it, like, add your flavorings to it.
Okay.
So season it. So, because this is not seasoned. A lot of people do add seasoning to their products. I am down to the basic. I want just the plain vegetable, because when I open it up, then I'm going to cook it, then I'm going to season it, and I know that my food is safe. I don't go too far off the path of where I put ham and stuff inside of my beans when I'm canning it. I've had it that way, and it's good. But I want my beans, when I open them up, I put them in a crock pot, or I put them in a pan, and I let them season with whatever I'm going to season them with. So you always put it in a cooking pot to make sure that you heat it before you eat it.
Let me ask you a question, like, so let's say you're canning like lima beans or something. Are you cooking the lima beans first and putting them in the jar?
Now,
and then you're cooking them again?
Are
Or
these
are they gonna be
dried?
mushy?
Are these dried or are these fresh?
I don't know.
So if you're taking them fresh from the garden, you're going to shell them out and you're going to put them in your jar. It does not get mushy after you open them. So you would just cook them with like your ham, your beans, whatever. You're just going to cook them long enough that you season them and get them. You're not going to cook them for like 12 hours.
Right.
You would just cook them for 20, 30 minutes, put your seasoning in it, like bacon grease, whatever you want to put in it, and be like you would be cooking it if you took it out of a regular can, out of a store-bought can. So because you have to, you have to season that, because if you serve that the way it comes, it's just bland as it can be. So you would do the same thing. So it does not break down. It actually preserves it. Especially like if it's dried lima beans, you have to soak them first to rehydrate them before you put them in a jar. Because if not, you're going to have some crunchy beans when they come out, because they're not going to be done. I'm just going to tell you, it's not going to be pretty, and more than likely you're going to waste a lot of food. So if you have any questions like that after the class, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. I'll be glad to come to your house and help you if you need me to. So I'll be more than happy to. Who wants to read the temperature of boiling water for me?
Let me finish.
Okay.
The temperature of boiling water, which is 100 centigrade or 212 Fahrenheit, is not hot enough to kill botulism spore, but it is hot enough to destroy the toxin that they produce. That's the poisonous part. Boiling food with
Botulinum toxin.
botulinum toxin in it for 10 minutes, or in the case of meat, using a meat thermometer and bringing it to an internal temperature of at least 185 degrees will make the food safe to eat. That means no more quick warm-ups in the microwave.
No more. We live in a society that we want to pop it, and I am guilty. I get hungry, I want to pop it in the microwave, and I want to eat. So make sure that you're properly cooking the food that you're serving. Go ahead.
Oh, it is not necessary to do this with high-acid foods or anything with a lot of sugar in it. I want to pronounce this word, botulinum. Toxins do not reproduce in those foods. It is also not necessary to heat before you eat anything that was processed in a pressure canner.
A pressure canner is your safest way to go. I will tell you. I still water bath because I don't want to spend all my day, all week long, running a pressure canner. I still water bathe. Pressure canner is your safest way to go. If you have any fear about canning food, pressure can, pressure can, pressure can. There ain't nothing you can't pressure can. I pressure can everything. Go ahead.
Where am I?
If you have canned your food.
Okay, if you have canned your food using proper times and taken all the appropriate precautions, your canned food is likely safer than commercially canned food. Wow. If you are a water bather, please take that one extra step and heat before you eat. My 10-year-old grandson likes to say, It should be heated before it is eaten. Of course, someone will tell you that they have been eating water-bathed foods without heating for years, and it's all been fine. Maybe, but you only have to get botulism once to spoil your whole life. That, my friends, is not pearl clutching, it's just choosing to be safe.
Yes.
All right. Shall I continue?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know, I guess everybody can hear me. If someone has told you that they got botulism from eating home canned foods and that they never went to a doctor, they are mistaken. There are other foodborne illnesses. There's a chart below. Botulism is far and away the rarest of the lot. It gets a lot of attention, however, because it is also the deadliest.
It is the deadliest of any of, but we already went over those, even on the CDC. If you pull up the CDC website, it does not even make the top 10 chart. If you do things the proper way, if you skip steps, if you want to be lazy about it, you taking that into your own hands, because I ain't doing that. I want to make sure my food is good.
Is it true that botulism, you can't smell it or taste it?
You cannot smell it or taste it. It is something that you cannot smell, you cannot taste. There will be no mold on it, so you can't tell it. Go ahead with which foods are low acid.
Which foods are low acid and which foods are high acid? I'm not going to give you an exhaustive list. I will give you a broad generalization and trust you to do some research. You can buy a pH test kit and know for certain which you are canning. A pH level of 4.6 or lower is needed to classify as a high acid food. If the pH is higher than that, as it will be in some tomatoes, then the addition of citric acid can make it safe to water bath and not require heating before eating. Be brave, be bold, be adventurous. But this is serious business, so please be safe. And your low acid is meat and meat products, even if it has high acid food with it. Most vegetables, dried beans, and lentils. Acidic foods are your fruits, high sugar jellies, all pickled things, and milk.
Yes. So this is a serious business. I do not take this class lightly because I do know that there is a potential for harm to come if you do not follow instructions. That is the reason why I gave you that whole packet of information. I have it all. If you need copies, Miss Amanda has copies that she's going to keep in the homesteading library, I guess is what we'll call it, to where if anybody needs copies of it or has more questions, please contact me. Yes?
Are you against us scanning this document and like putting it on Facebook for the group?
I can send it to you. You don't have to scan it. I'll just upload it to the group. So yeah, that's perfect. And like I said, if you guys need any help or any advice, I've got 15 minutes to spare, so I'm doing good. Now that other packet that I gave you, it's in there. It's in the same one. It's just kind of like what candy jars look like. There is a chart for times. I've got a chart in there that has how much food you want to plant in your garden if you want to preserve the food for each family member. So you want to plant this many plants for each person. I thought that would be kind of helpful information for you guys. So look over it. If you have any questions, reach out to Amanda. Amanda can get in touch with me. I can give you guys my phone number. I'd be more than happy to help. I love to teach this. Yes?
Okay, so now we're doing bees and we have honey. We can put those in the jars. We don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do anything to those.
All right.
Honey is pure.
But you need to seal it, right?
Huh?
And you have to seal it. It can rot it.
No, honey.
No, honey lasts for
Honey lasts forever.
Something like that.
It's pure. Yeah, so you do not have to do anything with honey.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
I realize this is a canning class, but at one point in my life, I had several foster children, and canning was not part of the option, so I went from vegetables to freezing. And that was much faster process with kids running around.
Oh, yeah.
But is the botulism as prevalent in freezing products as it is in canning?
Not in freezing. When you take it down below 32 degrees, it should kill it out. I'm not going to say that it's not, because it is born in the ground. A lot of your, like where botulism toxins come from, they come from the soil.
Okay, when you're saying that, I'm thinking it's in the ground, we're talking potatoes,
Uh-huh.
we're talking
Carrots,
carrots, stuff
turnips,
like that.
yeah.
So beans that are hanging up in the air, they'll be fine?
It still pulls it up through the soil, like where they feed. So it still would pull it up through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yes.
I have a question here, I'm just looking under the critters, and it says, like chicken with bones and no bones, it says hot and raw.
So hot means that you are cooking it first.
Okay.
Raw means you raw pack it. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that. So if it says,
Is the exact same for?
yes, if it's hot or raw. So meat, no matter how you pack it into a jar, is in 90 minutes, no less in a pressure cooker. Yes, sir. Okay. So hot pack and raw pack just is how you pack it in the jar. So if you parboil it, you cook it down, like say chicken noodle soup, you still want to pressure can that for 90 minutes. If you pack it in the jar raw, just take it off the bone and pack it, it's the same. So that's just how they pack it. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Now your storage, right? You
Yes.
talked about you store everything in your garage, temperature fluctuation.
Yes.
What is that range?
In the summertime, however hot it is outside, it usually is the same temperature. So in the wintertime, if it's 20 degrees, it's still 20. And so it's just an outdoor building. So it's like
It's not atmosphere controlled.
It's not atmosphere controlled at all. Yeah. So it fluctuates with whatever the outdoor temperature is. So that's how wide of a range it is. Once we get to the Homestead, I'm going to have a root cellar, which does regulate that a little bit more because you're going to have the insulation from the ground.
Right.
But we have always stored it that way in like an outbuilding. The only thing you have to watch for is sometimes if it gets too cold, it can freeze. Just make sure that you're keeping a watch on it. I've never had that personally to happen to me. Nothing. I've not lost anything due to weather change. But you do want to keep a watch on where you're storing it.
And obviously you can walk in your garage and you'll have meat or beef or chicken at 90 degrees sitting on the shelf.
Yep.
And it will be raw.
It'll be canned, and so it's cooked when you put it in the canner. It's cooked.
It's raw
So
meat,
yes,
once you put it in the jar,
Yes.
it's actually.
yes, you're cooking it. And so as long as it is sealed inside of that, it doesn't matter what the temperature is on the outside. As long as it is sealed.
Sealed on the top.
As long as you touch this. So and if anybody needs to know like if it's sealed or not sealed, this you'll hear it when you push it down. This one you should not feel any flex in that lid at all. So I just press that one down. I have to undo it. But that's how you can tell. And you can also visually see it. Well, you're supposed to. Let me have to get another one. You can also, as you're visualizing your jars, you can see the difference in the indentation. See how that's bubbled up and that it's not. So you can actually see it before you ever open the jar. You can tell if it's sealed or not.
It totally sounds different too.
Yes.
There, right?
See, this one don't give no give, that one does.
Right.
So you can tell visually that this jar is not sealed and this jar is sealed.
But the tattlers don't do that though.
No, that is true. The tattlers do not do that. So you have to make sure that you know which kind of lid you're using. See how it's visually in this?
So,
No, they'll be sealed like this. They just don't make that noise. Yeah, and you can't visually see it.
so I've got a
It
question.
pulls vacuum.
What I had cast.